Okay, so that when you go there, also tape it, okay? And, okay, that leads me, one of the interesting things, how many of you here have been on Pirates of the Caribbean? Well, in this room, look at that. That's about almost every single hand went up in this room. There must have been 20 people since I got here yesterday who have worked with me or heard me or done something else. Said, are you going to tell about the Pirates? And I said, well, I hadn't planned to. And they said, well, please tell about the Pirates. I have somebody I want to hear about the Pirates. I used to love to go on it. It was one of, I think, the best things Disney ever did in terms of real artistry in an attraction. But also buried in the Pirates of the Caribbean is the quality that you will find in the person that thinks out of the box, that break through and do all the things that you have been discussing. And that is something that we normally wouldn't pin on Walt Disney, and you know what it is? He was outrageous. The major quality of almost all these people is they're outrageous. They push the envelope. They will not stop at the status quo. They go beyond, just beyond the edge of what gets everybody upset. And you never thought of Walt as being outrageous, but think about his concept of Mickey Mouse. I mean, how outrageous you can get. Build an empire on a brand of a mouse. Imagine today trying to get people that financed Enron to go for that. They might. You see, but that mouse, just think about what whoa, how about this? Build a theme park in the middle of a dirty swamp in Orlando, Florida that nobody even wants the land, and we bought all the land, 30,000 acres, for $7 million. You get it? That's what a good house costs, $7 million. Well, no, you know what I'm saying. You guys know. You can get an okay house for $3 or $4 million, but nothing, oh my God. You know? You know what I'm talking about? You're just committed to average if you're stuck like that. And one of the things, well, you don't know how that bothers me. I think it's so irreligious to live in cheap houses. It just drives me crazy. When you have the ability, and more than anything else right now, is we need more entrepreneuring and new ideas and things to get things. See, part of our problem right now is that we keep repeating everything over and over and over. Everything's looking alike, sounding alike. You all know what I'm talking about. So that's why a group like you get on fire and look out. That's where it all really begins. So, Pirates of the Caribbean, we thought we really built something great. It was right before we opened it. You all know it has a restaurant adjacent to it called the Blue Bayou. And when Walt went in on the opening day with the press conference there, something wasn't right and he closed it. And of course, you can imagine that really irritated a lot of people when he closed that place up. And he sat down at a table. And he sat down at one of those dining tables. It's made out of Mediterranean slate. If you're ever there, go sit down in it. And he gathered around him a team. He didn't call a meeting for next Friday. He gathered around him a team. Right at that point, a waitress, he said, come on over and sit down with me. A man and woman that were still leaving because they had closed said, come on over and sit down with me. Where are you folks from? She said, Terre Haute, Indiana. He said, well, come and sit with me. And had a busboy over there, and he had about 6 people around the table. And he took cards out of his pocket and color pencils and began writing on them. I thought he was going to criticize, you know, what was wrong with it. And then he changed my life. And it changed it because how I felt and thought about children forever was different. He said something that just blew me away. He said, Mike, whenever you want to make anything better, never criticize it. Criticism, this is a quote from Walt Disney, is the worst form of all leadership, almost always failing. Well, you know how that bothered me? This was my mentor saying something to me that, having a lot of children myself, what do you do when they're all committing major felonies? And I was trying to figure out, here was my hero making this statement. And this is what he said. Because I said, what do you mean? He said, Mike, don't be critical. Be analytical. Use your mind to find out what was discussed this morning here. The cause behind the effect, the reason why it is happening. And then whatever it is that you're critical about, bring people, give people the tools to be successful, to succeed in the environments in which they are. See, most people fail because they don't have the tools to succeed in the environment in which they've been placed. That's why every good mentor, every good mother brings tools rather than a mouth. It is, I don't know how to quite say this to you, don't get mad at me. One of the biggest detriments to people's growth is their mouth. They talk too much. They gossip too much. They tear other people down too much, rather than focusing on what's going to make something really work. How are we going to correct it? So I was thinking, like we say to one of my boys, he was like 10, 11 years old, you can't play soccer if you don't make all B's or A's. That's one of the rules. Now, of course, he's a respectful boy. So he'll study and he'll make all A's, but he did it under duress. He might not, but he did. Instead of what I should have done, I should have said, you know, you should make all A's, John, because you have the capability of it. Could I show you how to make A's in school? Give me 2 or 3 sessions together, and I'll show you how to read and how to take notes and how to do it, and it'll enable you to make A's. Major point. Bring people the tools to succeed at what it is that they're doing, rather than criticizing their behavior. Why? Because the criticism identifies the problem, but it does not solve the problem. And one of the most fascinating things in the Pirates situation, we were watching Walt say, he said, what do you all like about Pirates of the Caribbean? I thought he was going to say what was wrong with it. And they said, well, the thing that we like best about it is the fact that there are clouds in there, many of you know, and the clouds move. They're not painted on the ceiling, they're moving clouds. But then one of the waitresses said, Walt, though, there's something missing. And he said, what? Some of you will remember my telling it. She said, there are no frogs. He said, what? She said, well, in a place like this where you have a pirate ride and you drop down a waterfalls and go through the pirate's den, you remember the music? Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. It's great. It grabbed you right away. And she said, one of the most important things, you need some frogs. And Walt Disney, you know, I couldn't tell you the look on his face. He spent $35 million to build Pirates of the Caribbean, and Disneyland actually only cost $17 million. And here he spent $35 million, and he didn't have any frogs. I wish you could have seen the look on Walt Disney's face when he looked at one of the designers and said, Joe, how on God's earth could we spend $35 million and leave out the frogs? Well, this is a Disney story. I got to modify some of these words. But you know, and he said, could you get me some frogs? He picked up the phone, called this guy, and he said, yeah, I can have them over this afternoon. You hear that? He didn't say, how many frogs do you want? What are you going to do with the frogs? Why do you need the frogs? We're out of frogs. We used to have them, but we don't. You know, what you find in most companies is that kind of a deal. He just said, when do you need the frogs? And they're over there. Next time you go to Disney World, Disneyland, they're under the tables. There's a speaker about that big on a continuous loop and staggered project so that you hear the, you only hear it once. You won't hear it at your table, but you hear it way over there. And all these different tables, you hear those frogs. You go in there with an accountant's shit, they'll never hear the frogs. Well, no, you know what I'm saying, or a banker or loan officer. We'll go, what frogs? You go in there with a child. Right away, Dad, you hear those frogs. And it's worth going there, I think. And then, I got to tell you one other thing. They also had fireflies. You know what I'm talking about? Lightning bugs. And if you look there in the environment, it's the fireflies dashing around that make it so intriguing, that make the environment something that you want to show everybody else. That is the other most important thing, is that when you do what you do so well, you do it automatically. And one of the most important things is that other people want to show other people what it is that you've done. And I'll show you that under creative thinking objectives. So I believe, what point was that? Number 4, to be outrageous. Wasn't that right? So to really be outrageous, get some frogs in your life. You know, I know that sounds silly, but you get what I'm talking about. Then, number 5, I've been talking around a lot about it, and I want to do it before I forget, is have a mentor. If you right now don't have a mentor, go to work on getting yourself a mentor, a really good mentor. In other words, be a protege. Part of the programs that you're working here in the coaching program, that's what that's all about. I say this, and please don't misunderstand me, and Tom didn't pay me to say it. To be a protege to someone, there is no cost that is the right cost. You know, because you can't charge enough, you can't think it's worth enough, etc. Because what you're exchanging is one person is exchanging themselves with another person. It's themselves. And so what I want to say to you, that the money part of it should never even, I think, be only one reason you should consider it, and that is that whatever it takes for you to do it, to get a hold of it so that you've got it, to be able to do it as long as you want to do it. That's the only issue that you should have. And one of the things I stopped to think, that if I had not been outrageous enough that when Walt Disney, you know, came, one of you asked me, who was that here, asked me, how did I meet Walt Disney? A couple of you came up to me, I was sitting up here and say, how did you meet Walt Disney? By accident. I was speaking to a father-daughter banquet of the National Charity League of Beverly Hills. And while I was there, Walt Disney, I found, was there. And he came up to me at the end of my talk with these two daughters, Sharon and Diane Disney, and he walked up to me and he said, I enjoyed your speech. I didn't like your humor, but I did like your speech. And I was a nervous wreck. I always wanted to meet Walt Disney, and there he was standing in front of me. And he looked at me and he said, why don't you come over and see me? And he said, I'd like to talk with you about some things that we're doing. I didn't go, by the way. I just thought, he's being nice. And a couple of days later, I received a telephone call from his secretary saying, could you come over? Walt would like to talk to you. So I was embarrassed, of course, but I did go over. And he said, Mike, how'd you like to come to work for me? And as part of coming to work for me, I'd be glad to mentor you a little bit on how to really be good in this field that we all are in of communicating. Well, you know how I felt. And that's when I became so interested in this whole idea of mentoring. You've already heard about it at this convention. You've already heard what I'm going to tell. But I'm awful proud and happy to tell you that sitting right over there, Tom Ferry, is one of my new proteges for the next 2 years. I think what's so wonderful about it, he and his dad and I were talking about it, we had a relationship like that back before he was thought of, and one of the interesting things now to have it with his son, one of his sons, is just the greatest, you know what I'm saying? And one of the really fascinating, I think you told him about it, didn't you? And what's really interesting to me, he's committed himself to a 2-year program. And one of the things that I do in a 2-year program is try to contribute as much to the person's current work or business as is possible in all the parts of my mentoring program, even though it goes a little bit differently. My fee is $48,000 per year. So he is committed to spend $48,000 a year for a period of 2 years to do the things that I've proposed and we've worked on together to do. So you can kind of see where he's coming from, how committed that he is to achieve something. And I wanted to tell you, and by the way, we'll leave these up here, but there's a little explanation of this Mentors Club and what we call the Masters Program. And if you'd like it, ask Di for some, and she'll be happy to give you a description of it. But only because so you can understand the things I'm talking about. I just want to tell you a couple of things that we do, because in your mentor things that you do for yourself, and you should also have a program that you develop for yourself, too. Because I call it Rich Little mentoring. You know what I'm talking about? You know Rich Little? In other words, you make a mentor's program in your own head, like you're Rich Little, and be the different peoples that you'd like to be because you study them and know them so well. You can have, you got it? Oh, it really does work. So some of the things you want to do in your Rich Little self-mentoring program, here's what Tom and I will be doing together. We'll have what I call a mentor's rendezvous. And that's where he and I will meet one-on-one, 2 nights and a day, 3 times a year. At which time we will work on the things that we're working on together and the various projects, et cetera, that we have. The other major thing that we do, besides doing mentoring calls of 45 minutes twice a month, because we've got these different projects that we're working on, what I do is present to him a mentoring concept, like have more experiences. And then I ask a question. He just now told me he had how many? He's already got 21 questions when we get together the next time. And then I think about them, and at the end of the call, give him my thoughts about it. Then we have a study program in which we interweave the 5 major areas of philosophy to help build a strong underlying concept in your life. Then the next thing that we do is he writes a thesis and a book, and when it's published, we publish it as a book. I've gotten it started by doing a mock-up of Tom's book with me. There you can all see it. It's called Coaching for Greatness by Tom Ferry with Mike Vance, How to Realize Your Dreams. Someday I want you to be coming up here and having him autograph this book for you. And we will do it whenever we get it done. We're not saying that we're going to do it in 2 years. We might do it in 6 months. But when that comes out, that's what I like to do with each person that I mentor when it is possible. Sometimes my name doesn't appear on it, but I am involved in it. So then we do an entrepreneurial program in addition to a book, which means that we start a business together of some kind, or take a business that he wants to expand out and work on that using everything that we know. So you can see it's a very proactive, doing a lot of stuff. And the neat thing, when we get done, he is published, which I think is very important. All of you should be published. And not only that, he's sunk into really building the kind of thing, as his life goes on, it gets better. And as his memories build up, they become more and more motivational memories, the kind of memories that you can live with. And you know, many people build memories that they can't stand to be alone with. So that's why a lot of people don't want to be alone, because they don't like to be with themselves. And the greatest human gift is the ability to be able to be alone and to be with yourself. So you watch for Tom's book, it'll be something like this. Now, by the way, I won't tell you this, but Mike Ferry will. I picked 3 because Tom asked me to. People that I have mentored, to give you a little idea of what happened, how any one of you in this room might use it. One is Mike Ferry, and he will tell it to you and has told you things about it as we go along. My partner, whom some of you over here knows, started a mentoring program with me about 20-some years ago. Diane, whom many of you know or will get to know, I met her in a gym. Maybe she'll tell you the story about how we met. She was sent to a seminar she didn't want to go to, but she had to go, and so she sat in the back so she could get out. And I walked in and was one of the first people in, and I said, "What are you doing way in the back? The seminar's up there." She said, "I sit in the back so I can get out in case this guy's no good." And she said to me, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm the guy." But anyway, needless to say, she came up and we became friends. She became a protege, and I'm happy to tell you about Diane. Her entrepreneurial project with me, we started the Creative Thinking Association of America, which has grown into a very influential association in the field of creativity. Diane herself, I'm so proud of her for this, is on the board of directors of Mother Teresa's thing called Hospice and Home Care and the Caring Institute in Washington, D.C. She's the only, I think, person I think she's the only person in there under 80. But she, as I told you, co-authored. We have done 4 books together. The first book was Think Out of the Box, then Break Out of the Box, and we have them all here. You can get all of them back at the product table. And the concept of Raise the Bar, which a couple of you here have, and one of the things that I'm looking forward to with Tom is the opportunity to work with his fine mind in developing a concept that'll be good and helpful to all of you. Another thing, Diane has done 2 major factory projects because her entrepreneurial project, as she developed her philosophy, she became, as many people in this room know, one of the really fine facilitators of creating ideas and projects in America. Motorola has sent her twice to help build factories, one in Beijing, China, the other in Seoul, Korea. And for a young woman, if you all get to know her and look at her, the General Motors Corporation put her in charge of leading the groups for the entire General Motors conversion in the Y2K project. You think about what I'm saying to you. And so she has been an extraordinary protege. Another protege, do you mind if I tell you where we rendezvoused? You know, I call it the mentor's rendezvous. Diane and I like to rendezvous in New York City. I recommend it to you, the Plaza, and go to the Palm Court for tea and hire a limousine, not a damn taxi, get a limousine. Keep them waiting, go see at 4 o'clock the Palm Court and have tea and champagne, and then go that night in your limousine and see whatever's the latest musical or what have you. Have your limousine waiting in the street. Don't go out there and be one of the tourists. Have them take you to the Russian tea room and have supper at 10 o'clock at night and stay up to 1 o'clock and have your limousine take you back to Central Park and get you a cab, horse-drawn, to draw you through the park with a bottle of champagne. Stay up to 3 o'clock, sleep till noon, and then go get your limousine to pick you up and take you to the tavern on the Green and have what we call a cross between supper and dinner called Lupper. You do it. Now you do that and think of me when you do it. Send us a web note. We're here. And I had that happen because on our mentoring program, we have a thing called the Brain Exchange. Some of you here have taken and subscribed to the Brain Exchange, which I recommend stuff for people to do. And you know what I just described to you all? When Di went the first time to see the Broadway musical Barnum with me, we did just what I described to you. We were at the Plaza, and a man runs across the room in the Palm Court screaming my name. I was embarrassed. He said, "Mike, Vance." And I didn't know who it was. And he said, pardon me, I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to tell you, I'm here with my daughter. I take your Brain Exchange, and I'm kind of one of your proteges. I said, "What?" He said, "I brought my daughter here for her. You said, when your daughter's 21, take her to New York City and describe what to do, and she's here. And you said, don't be cheap," and I haven't been cheap. And it was so great, it was so great. He said, "We're going to Barnum tonight." I said, "Oh, that's great, maybe we'll see there." I've got to tell you something, if you don't mind. At Barnum that night, Di was standing next to me, and down comes this girl at the intermission. She walked over to me and she said, "Mike, I don't know who you are. I never heard the name Mike Vance till my father mentioned it this afternoon. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you have done. I know nothing about you." But she said, "All I know is my father said we're here because of you, that you told him to bring me here for my 21st birthday." She said, "I don't know what you do, but whatever it is, don't quit doing it." One of you asked me, we were talking out here, don't you get tired of doing what you do? I've done it so long. I said, sure. I get tired of it, but not that tired. I get tired of, flying and going all around, but not so tired that I won't do the things that you really love to do. And as Mike Ferry said, it has nothing to do with money. That's the hardest thing to get into people's head. Except that the more you do the things you love to do, the money comes in bushel baskets. It's absolutely the most fascinating phenomenon. And some people think you got to go steal it. You know? In fact, there's quite a few of those people around, aren't there? But you really don't have to do that at all. Okay, so that is Diane. I hope you all get to know her while we're here. And then I had the great fortune to mentor Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer. And I helped him start Apple and Pixar and his company called Next. And he had a different rendezvous points. Di liked very much to go to New York City and to the Palm Court. And she also, we went to a place called the Pine Lake Trout Club. And we went there to go trout fishing. Steve Jobs, that was one of his rendezvous places when we met her. He wanted to go to the Pine Lake Trout Club. As a matter of fact, the day that Apple went public on the New York Stock Exchange, Steve was fishing with me and my children at the Pine Lake Trout Club, and my son John was 5 years old, teaching him how to fly fish while they went public, which I thought was the greatest way. And he said to Vanessa, my 7-year-old daughter, "Do you like your apple?" And she says, "Yes, but it smells." And if you could have seen his face, she said, "It smells like burnt plastic." She said, "Steve, you're smart enough, you could build a better computer." She said, "I put scratch and sniffs on my keyboard whenever I sit down." Yeah, you should have seen the look on his face. He looks at me, and we knew. Di, one of the very first things that we did, her mentor rendezvous point was in San Francisco. Also, she was, by the way, she won't tell you this, but I will. But if any of you here like the Macintosh, Diane Deacon was the first person to ever use the Macintosh. One morning when we went there, Steve says, "I got something I want to show you. I'm so excited." And I said, "What?" She said, "Come on." And he took us up the second floor in Cupertino, a place called Apple University, which we'd helped start together based on Disney U. And one of the interesting things, he said, "Di, sit down." And she sat down in front of a monitor, and he handed her a mouse. And he put his arm around Di, and he said, and put his hand on her, and he said, "Pull that mouse back." And she pulled the mouse back, and the door of the file cabinet came open on the monitor. He said, "Take the file out." She, "How did you do it?" She just lifted it out. He took the mouse and just lifted it out, and the folder opened up. And of course, a revolution was beginning. That was the first use of the Mac. And then we went on, and as you all know, I've had ups and downs, of course, with Steve. He's had lots of troubles, because when we started out, he was 19 years old. And we built a company with $1 billion in sales in a little over a year and 2,000 employees with a 19-year-old in charge. So you can imagine what a challenge it was. That's how I got this color hair. But anyway, our favorite place to rendezvous, the reason I'm asking you that is Tom and I, we have not picked our rendezvous spots yet. Steve's was on the hill above Stanford University. Any of you know that where it is? He and I'd go up there at sunset, we'd have dinner together, and then we would sit up there and dream, and we coined an expression that he was famed for using, insanely great. That whatever we want to do, let's make it insanely great. And that was how we thought we would revolutionize the way people worked in their home. And out of it, of course, you all know what happened. With our love of Walt Disney and his love of Walt Disney, another company was started called Pixar, which is taking over where Walt left off in animation. And as you know, already has received Academy Awards, and it's just a brand new company. So Steve has been a really wonderful example, I think, of someone that I've worked a lot with. I could stand here and talk to you, I'm not going to, but for probably 200 or 300 different people that I've had, and that's why I'm looking so forward. I only do a limited number of them because the intensity of the involvement, I can't do too many of them. I have one more I want to tell all of you about, because all of you know this man. And he, I would say, was probably the oldest person that I ever met.